I had a lot of questions about the Chapter 12 TAPS. And let's start with the first one. And this is the basic problem underlying our understanding of the labor demand curve, and in particular, why it is that the value marginal product curve of the firm is the same as the demand curve as the firm. And the lesson we want to get out of this is that the quantity of labor that we want to hire is always the quantity where the value marginal product for the last worker hired is equal to the wage rate. All right, let's dive in. If a set of shutters sells for 220 and the competitive market wage is 1,000 per week, how many workers should Woodfold hire? How many sets of shutters will the company produce each week? So the first thing we need to know is what the net price, what money comes into the firm for each set of shutters they make. And this is simply the price of the product minus the cost of inputs, which in this case are 80. So the firm gets $140 per set of shutters. And now we can proceed to calculate the value marginal product. We first need to find out the physical marginal product. And this is just for number one. We see that this relationship changes for part C or D, I can't remember which. But as we hire a first worker, our output goes up by 10. Marginal product of labor is simply the change in output divided by the change in labor, and we see that labor is always going up by 1. So change in output over 1 is 10. That goes up to 15. Eventually we always hit a range of diminishing marginal products, but at first, as we turn on the lights and get each machine operating at its best level, we might experience increasing marginal product. So we keep just taking the difference in output as we add labor, and here we are at the range of diminishing marginal product. Oh, that's supposed to be a 6. That didn't come out very well. There we go. 3 and 2. Also, that 3 is a little bit weak, but hopefully you can see that that's a 3. All right. Now, value marginal product is simply the marginal product times the net price. And so we're going to just multiply each of these values times 140. So we get 1,400, 2,100, 1,400, 1,120. Apologies for my messy handwriting. I've got this all neat and tidy on the answer key, but I want to show you where that answer key came from. 4 times 140 is 560. 3 times 140, 420. And finally 2 times 140, 280. Well, now we say, all right, as long as the benefits of hiring one more worker, that's the value marginal product, exceed the cost of hiring one more worker, that's our weekly wage, then we'll hire one more worker. Do we hire the first one? Yes. Second one? Yes. Third one? Yes. Fourth worker? Yes. Fifth worker? No. 840 is less than our wage rate, and so we wouldn't hire that fifth worker. So our answer is 4. We would hire that fourth worker, but not the fifth. And so 4 workers or 4 worker weeks. And what's the output level associated with that? That's 43 sets. Now, one thing to watch out for, I notice on exams, I ask for the quantity of output. People give me the workers hired or vice versa. So make sure you read the question properly. We can keep going on with this set of calculations for the next part. I'll change my color. Now the weekly wage rises to $1,150 per week. But none of this marginal product or value marginal product information changes. So now when we go through that calculation of how many workers we hire, would we hire the first one? Yes, 1,400 is more than the wage rate of 1150. Do we hire the second one? Yes, 2,100 is higher than 1150. Third one? Yeah, 1,400 is higher than 1150. But now that fourth worker simply doesn't bring us enough value to justify hiring that fourth worker. So this increase in the wage rate would cause the firm to lay off one worker. And so let's make sure we see what the question is asking us. How would the new wage affect Woodfold's decision about how many workers to hire? They're asking about workers, not about output. So I would say 3 workers are now hired. Part C goes on to ask, what if the unionization led to a 15% increase in worker productivity? And remember, Frank talks about this. It could be that the union training and worker certification leads to more productivity. Could be that unions actually facilitate communication with management. There's a lot of reasons why unions might not be all bad from the point of view of firm productivity. If you talk to managers that have had experience with union workers, they might argue with that assertion. But anyway, that's the hypothesis, or one hypothesis that explains why sometimes union firms can compete against non-union firms and still hold their own. If you didn't understand that last minute or so, then go back to your reading and read that section again. Anyway, here we see that if worker productivity goes up by 15%, well then output at each level of employment goes up by 15%. And I just recalculated that off screen. Marginal product then changes. Indeed, it goes up by 15%. And assuming net price is still 140, which it is in the given information, we see this new value marginal product relationship. And lo and behold, at a wage of, recall that in Part B it was 1,150. That was the rise in wages that the union brought about. Well, now it still makes sense for us, or for this firm. The first worker makes sense to hire it. Second worker makes sense. Third worker makes sense. And now because of the increase in productivity, the fourth worker makes sense to hire. But again, not the fifth worker, because 966 is less than 1,150. So now we're back to 4 workers. So we can just say back to 4 workers. So in this case, the union didn't reduce employment after all because of that productivity increase. Now I see Part D. Now we're going to ask what a price increase does, and I'm just going to go off screen for a moment and multiply value the marginal product prime by, instead of 140, I'm going to multiply through by 250 minus 80. That's 170. So I'll be right back with that. All right, now at a price of 250 and a net price of 170, our value marginal product function is VMP double prime. And so we're going to hire every worker whose benefit is greater than 1,150 per week. That's the wage, that's the cost side. As long as the benefits of hiring one more worker for a week, then we're going to hire that worker. But if the benefits don't exceed the cost, then we're not going to hire that worker. So we hire the first one, we hire the second one, we hire that third worker, the fourth worker, even the fifth worker now. 1,173 is greater than 1,150, so that fifth worker gets hired, but not this sixth worker. So now we're hire 5 workers. So that's how that problem went. This is a very, very basic problem. Basic not meaning easy, but basic meaning essential would be a better word. It's critical to understand this problem, to understand the labor demand function. I now see, actually doing this answer key on screen and trying to keep it short, I realized just how much calculation I had asked you to do by hand. I fortunately have a spreadsheet to do it, but my goodness, what a bear. On a quiz situation, I'll make sure I require less calculation by hand.